Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, back in April, we started our chilli trial, and they're now getting to the point where they need to be potted on. I'm putting these into 9-inch pots, which are quite big, but those are the terms of the trial, and also these need to stay in the pots well into the autumn, so it gives them a chance for a decent root run. We've got 3 types here, remember. There's Numex Twilight, which we're going to try mainly outside, but I'll put some into pots. We've got Fiesta and Joe's Long. Fiesta to see how many fruits we can produce on each plant. Joe's Long to see which is the longest we can do. And the potting compost I'm putting them into is normal Berryfields potting compost mixed with perlite. Now you can substitute the perlite for grit, sharp sand, vermiculite, but the important thing is to thin it down. Chilies don't like lots of nutrition. They like lots of sunshine, lots of heat, and quite thin growing conditions. Because if you give them too much goodness, you'll get really bushy plants, and you think they're going well, but you won't get many fruits, if any. Treat them rough, and they'll repay you with lots of those delicious fruits. By the way, we've got about 2,000 that we're taking along to Gardener's World Live for the plant swap. So if you've got any spare plants, bring them along. You can take away one of our chilies, and we'll be very happy to have one of your plants. Now, I'll finish planting these up, but later on in the programme, Carol will be planting some Numex Twilight into the hot end of the long borders. Joe's going to be in his new garden he's making, planting up some containers. He's got miscanthus, he's got agapanthus, and I'll actually be spending most of the programme in the jungle garden.
Here, in the hot end of the long border, we've got all sorts of wonderful plants with really vibrant colours. But when you look around, even though the plants themselves are very different, the actual size and scale of their leaves is very, very similar. And sometimes when you look at a border, your colours might be right, all the shapes are working well together, but you're missing something. And it's very often the drama that you get from big leaves. So I want to introduce something with really big dramatic leaves to ring the changes. And for contrast, I'm going to plant these 2 bananas. I've put one in already. Now this is a banana that's fairly new in cultivation, and isn't it splendid? I absolutely adore it, although I can't say its name. It's Ansete ventricosum montbéliardii, and it's only recently been introduced into cultivation. But it's just the ticket for this part of the border with these great big gorgeous leaves and fabulous dark midribs. So I'm going to put it in 2 places. I've already planted one down here, and I'm going to have one here. And by the end of the summer it should be really magnificent, but it's not hardy. So when the end of the summer comes towards October, November, I'm going to lift it and put it into the greenhouse in a big pot where it'll continue to grow over winter, and with a bit of luck we'll be able to put it out next year twice as big as it is now. But there's an even more special plant that I want to include on the corner down here. It's a tropaeolum, so it's related to nasturtiums, but it's a tropaeolum with a difference. This one's called tricolor, and it's got these dainty little flowers, quite magical, orange and yellow with a sort of bluey purple end to them. And I'm going to put it in here, in this mini obelisk. Again, it will really appreciate this lovely humusy soil, and a real contrast to things like the strong foliage of the irises and the big phormium that you can see in the background. But another plant that I want to put in to really hot up this border are these chilies. This is Numex Twilight from our trials, and I'm going to grow it 2 different ways. I'm going to actually plunge the pot, plant the whole pot into the ground, and I'm going to try just taking them out of the pots and planting them directly, and we'll see which do best. They're doing a trial of chilies at RHS Wisley this year, but last year Jim England, who's in charge of the trials, did some experiments to see what was the best way of growing them outside.
With this climate change, that you are able to grow things outside perhaps more now than we would 10-15 years ago. Proved it with peppers, and they will do very well outside in the sun. And I think if you've got a really warm, sunny balcony, you could get away with some of these varieties and get them right. We found a few problems with taking them from the greenhouse and putting them outside. We got them all nicely laid out, and then the wind started to blow, and it blew virtually all the pots over, so we had to put bricks on them to support them and hold them down. We did already decide that we would plunge a lot of the plants into our bigger containers, and they've stood up perfectly. We would need to grow them in pots to contain them, to avoid them getting too big, so that it makes them produce chilies. Therefore, the ideal way is to grow them in pots like we've done this year and just plunge them into the soil. One thing to look out for with these compact varieties is that they could get leggy, and you need to trim them so you've got a nice shaped plant which won't actually fall over. In doing that, you'll encourage it to make new shoots and get a longer season of cropping of fruit, and you won't lose any fruit in the long term. Tall varieties will need staking, otherwise they're very top heavy. If we look at the Hungarian hot wax, it forms quite a nice big red chili, and you get quite a heavy crop on there. One problem you do get, you may have to tie the branches up a little bit. You see that some of the branches, they get very heavy, so you may do have a little bit of tying in to avoid them snapping off. When it comes to looking for AGM varieties, when we're giving the actual award, we'll be looking at ones which crop heavily and crop early and give us good colour. Obviously earliness is the important thing, because people want to get as much crop as possible out of them, and they want to be able to start picking in August. They don't have to wait till the end of September to do their harvesting. It won't be possible for all the committee to taste them because they're so strong that, and again, once they've tasted one, no matter how much water you might give them, they won't be able to taste another one because they'll have that flavour in their mouth for quite some time.
Last year we started our jungle garden. Now, if you remember, this was in response to your request. We asked what you'd like us to make in this space, and the overwhelming response was a lush jungle garden. That's precisely what we did, and it worked really well. It showed that in a very small space you can create a distinct atmosphere and maintain it. It felt like a garden rather than a planting exercise, and it's come back well. The Dicksonias and the other ferns have really responded to this mild, wet spring we've had in the year of the drought, and they're looking great, as well as the bamboos. They again love that moisture, and look, you've got look at that culm growing there, and these really healthy plants. So we'll keep those as a structure. Now we want to keep with the jungle theme and develop it, and I think the way to go is to bring more colour. Last year we were going for lush greenness. This year we want lush colour. Now, we had left in some gingers in the ground, hoping they'd come back, and of course they have really good colour, but there's absolutely no sign of life at all. So I'm going to dig it up, and that will create quite a lot of space, which is a shame, because I wish it had come through, but you win some, lose some with gardening, especially with tender plants like gingers, bananas, even dahlias can find it tough to go through. Quite a substantial root system on this. Right, if we lose, yeah, you see that's breaking off there. Now if I take that out, like that. Oh, actually that's not true, there's a little bit of life in there. Ah, we have got some life. Okay, well what I'm going to do is pop that up, and I might be able to keep it going. Now, we've got some space, but if you can see, we've got some eucomis coming through. These are very alive. There's one there, there's another one there, there's a little one in there. What I thought I'd do is move these so they're in a group. And that's got a surprisingly large root, actually. Now, out that comes. You see, look, good root system there. May not be much to see on top, but there's plenty underneath. So, if I dig that out, fill back the hole that I've left and pop that in. There we go. Right, now this has made some room to put in something with colour, which is why I bought these cannas in. I've got two different types. This is the first one. This is Canna Durban. And you can see it's got a sort of pinkish orange flush behind the purple leaves. And the idea is, into this green jungly space, I want to bring some purple foliage and colour, bright colour. And Durban has orange flowers. And it's quite a big plant. In this really rich soil, it will grow very vigorously indeed, I hope. Now, the thing about cannas is that they like rich soil, plenty of moisture, and plenty of heat and sun. So I'm afraid if you're living in an area that is suffering badly from drought, and you've got sandy or chalky soil, you're probably on a hiding to nothing. But if you've got heavy clay like we have here at Berryfields, and you've got some water butts so you can water if you have to, then definitely I'll give it a go. Now that will grow up, that will fill this space. I could put another one in there, but I don't think there's a lot of room. And I also want to make room for these. This is another type of canna. This is Indica purpurea. Now I think this is a cracker. It's not one I've grown before actually. But you can see the green coming through, and the veins and the outside of the leaf has got the purple. And this has got bright red flowers. So we're going to put probably 2 or 3 in there. Although it is big, it will grow really strongly. As well as the cannas, I'm adding Lysimachia. This is Lysimachia ciliata firecracker. It'll grow in any reasonably heavy soil, but thrives in damp conditions and produces these small but brilliant yellow flowers. The only thing to watch out for, it is quite aggressively clump forming and will spread once it gets established. But it's very easy to break up and then replant. Our jungle garden is just a year old, but it's growing very, very vigorously. Now you imagine that this will just all get bigger and bigger as the years go by. And to see what a mature jungle garden looks like, and that's not very old, we took ourselves off deep into the heart of the Black Country.
I think today is an absolute scorcher, probably around about 27 degrees. Just the sort of weather you need for a tropical garden, isn't it? Well, we're in the heart of the West Midlands, the Black Country, right on the edge of Wolverhampton. Originally the garden consisted of 3 lawns. We went on a holiday down to Cornwall, and one day we visited the Eden Project.
When we came back home, we decided we would change the garden completely.
We did a bit of research, we bought a book, and we discovered that you could grow these plants here.
We didn't have any prior knowledge of achieving a tropical effect, but we read articles in magazines, made notes when we saw ideas on television programmes, researched plants on the internet.
Jungle gardening can be expensive if you want to invest in something large and get immediate impact, but something like 80% of this particular garden actually is grown from seed. It's amazing what you can achieve in 3 years.
Well, the highs really are seeing it develop. I mean, we plant out at the end of May and then it just explodes really, and the plants keep going until October.
I think what I love when I come down in the morning is just to see how much the plants have grown. I mean, some of these plants with enormous dustbin-sized leaves, they just seem to expand overnight. You tend to find that until about mid-July things are just idling along, but then from mid-July onwards the growth is tremendous, isn't it? We come down, we see the bamboos 4 or 5 inches a day, the ricinus just seems to be going bigger and bigger, doesn't it, almost by the hour. I mean, there are parts of the garden which are really difficult to walk through, and I'd like it to be like that, I think, all over the garden. So it becomes more of an adventure rather than a landscape, rather than maybe a picture to look at. It becomes an adventure to actually fight your way through.
I think our secret of success probably is working together and enjoying it together. I do some things I never interfere in the greenhouse, for instance. I never water anything.
Every man needs a greenhouse, I think, somewhere where you can disappear to on a Saturday afternoon and just pot, you know, just do the things you like to do.
I don't think we'll ever be happy with the way it is. I mean, even now we're looking around and thinking, that doesn't work, we should have planted that in a different place. We're just experimenting really, aren't we? And next year it will be different because we shall plant things in different places, perhaps have a new scheme in certain areas.
I think that's the exciting thing about jungle planting, is that no 2 years are ever the same, are they? You come across a different plant, or you decide a particular plant isn't growing very well in a particular place in the garden, so you decide to change it. You think about the colour combinations, leaf sizes, and each year it's almost like designing a new garden, and that's the exciting thing, I think, about jungle gardening.
Well, it just goes to show how much you can achieve in a garden in 3 years. But my modern family garden has been going just 3 or 4 months. But a garden is never static and it's always changing. Now, I put the deck in this modern family garden. It wraps around the shed here, so it gives good access to the shed. There's another seating area there, but also I wanted to get some more definition and more design into this garden. So I've left 3 planting pockets in front of the shed. And as far as planting is concerned, well, this is where you get your own style into the garden. This is where you choose the plants that you want. If you want to go for a really formal look, you could use like clip box here. You could use tall bamboos to help screen the shed. Now, the soil here is really quite heavy, big lumps of clay, so I've broken it up as much as possible. I put some grit in there to improve drainage. And now I'm using this, which is a mix between bracken and manure. It's not to be confused with composted bracken, which is higher in acidity. This is in the neutral band as far as acidity is concerned, so it's perfect, and it's a really nice texture, and it'll open up the soil beautifully. And I'm putting a load of that in there, and I'm going to break it up and really dig it in. I've gone for a lovely grass, a Miscanthus yakushima, which is a dwarf Miscanthus sinensis grass. It's going to get to about 1.5, 1.7 metres tall. It's about sort of 6 foot roughly. It's going to be perfect. And also the grasses hold their lovely structure all the way through the winter, which is what I like about them. But they're quite light and delicate. I think a bamboo would just be too heavy and screen off the shed a little bit too much. So they're quite small when they're going in here. And there you go. So with 3 of them, they're going to really break up the backdrop to this garden in front of this shed and look great. Now, on the patio, I'm going to do some container planting. Now, I know when you go down to the garden centre, it's so tempting to buy, all different types of containers. You see one and then you see another and you want them all, and also come back with lots of different sizes. But if you want a really designed look to the space, keep it really simple. So I've chosen these 3 big terracotta pots, and big pots in a small space create more impact. And I'm planting them formally, again, just to introduce, some good structure into the garden. The plants I've chosen are these Agapanthus. This one's called Agapanthus Lock Hope. They were in terracotta pots in berry fields, and they've been flowering beautifully, but I think they're going to look great here, so I sort of nicked them for my garden. And as you can see, the root system is really, really well developed here. It's fantastic, and that's what they like. They like it pretty pot-bound, restricted. So I'm just going to put them in this terracotta pot, and there's a little bit of space to get some compost around the edge. So rather than dividing them up and putting them into separate containers, I'm going to keep them as a whole here, and then I'm going to backfill with this mixture, which is 2 parts compost, 2 parts grit. They do like it very well drained, and 1 part loam, which is just topsoil really, just to sort of bulk it up a little bit and keep a bit of moisture around the roots. And I'm going to pack it in pretty tightly around all the edges so there's no air gaps at all. And these are already starting to flower. You can see the buds on them, and in the summer they're going to have these fabulous round blue flower heads all the way along. 3 of them, they're going to look fantastic. The Agapanthus will look stunning by midsummer, and here's some other ideas for containers you may like to try. For a traditional formal pot, go for a sculptural yucca as a centrepiece surrounded with bedding such as Diacia, Helichrysum and Bacopa. If you're going on holiday or looking for minimal maintenance, you can't go wrong with a pot planted up with succulents. This Aloeferox makes a weird and wonderful focal point.
This year, we decided to change the look of our jungle garden by injecting lots of hot tropical colours. I'm adding Lobelia Queen Victoria, which will produce scarlet columns of flower right throughout the summer. And there are other plants that will give us just the same effect. This is Brugmansia sanguinea. Now Brugmansias, and I used to know them as daturas by the way, but Brugmansias, the flowers hang down, and daturas, they stick up like a trumpet. Brugmansias are a tropical plant. They love the wet. In other words, they'll be ideal for rich soil. And they have these fabulous trumpet flowers. Really great, big, voluptuous trumpets. And on sanguinea, they are a sort of orangey yellow with a red crimson base. Really dramatic. Now, if you grow them in a pot, they can flower as early as June. And certainly much earlier than if you grow them outside. And what happens, it's a bit like the chilies. By putting them in this rich soil, we will get a really big, lush plant, and they want to be almost a small tree. And then they will flower later on in the summer. And the secret of getting them to flower again the next year, particularly if you grow them in containers, is to cut them back and then put them somewhere cool and dark. Don't feed them, let them dry right out, and give them a dormant period. Treat them a bit rough. Don't repot them, keep the roots bound, and then they will come back next year and then flower right through the summer. But as I said, what we're after is lushness here. But be warned, they are poisonous. Every part of the plant is poisonous, so if you're handling them, wash your hands. Okay, Brugmansias I've grown for many years and they're no trouble. They're dead easy to grow. But this is a plant I've never even heard of before, let alone grown. It's called Coffea ignea. And I've chosen it because I saw it and I just love these little flashes of orange flowers, apparently known as a cigar plant, and it comes from the region in the Central Americas around Mexico and Jamaica, and should thrive in these conditions. Now I'm going to treat it as an annual, and it'll give us a sort of mid-story. We've got the top story and the Brugmansia will go up to add to that. Now I want something that's going to grow about 2 or 3 foot high with colour. But it won't take cold weather. So just pop it in, and I'll put a few in so we pick up those flashes of colour. I can't tell you how it'll grow, having not grown it before. We'll share that one as we go along. But I would expect it to go on flowering for the rest of the season. Let's put one in over there. The beauty of having rich soil is you can just use your hands and pull the soil apart. And if you're watching this in drought-stricken area of the country with very, very thin soil, you probably won't be able to do it even if you want to. But here are some things that everybody can get on with this weekend. At this time of year, if we get some hot weather, it's very common for all your spring lettuces to mature at once. So you get a glut followed by nothing. To avoid this, harvest them every day and then sow every week. And this way, you'll get a succession of good lettuce that will last right through the summer.
The seed pods of Primula vulgaris, our native primrose, germinate readily from green seed before dormancy sets in. Carefully split a pod with your thumbnail, take off the seeds which are still slightly sticky, and wipe them on the surface of damp compost. Cover with sharp grit and stand your tray in shallow water, then place it in a shady spot.
If you sowed annual bedding earlier in the year, it should be flourishing and thickening up by now. It's a good time to dig up plants from denser areas and replant in spaces that are bare. Another good tip before the plants get too tall is to support them with a large meshed net stretched over the area and held about 18 inches above the ground.
Well, I bet in all the years of Gardener's World, I am the first Gardener's World presenter to be filmed doing the washing up. But actually it goes on all day because the crew drink innumerable cups of tea, and all the water used to wash up their mugs could be used on the garden, because this is grey water. Grey water is used to wash things, whether it be the cameraman's cups or your body when you have a bath. And that can all go back on the garden. But before you do so, it's worth thinking of a couple of things. The first is what soap you use, whether it's for your hair or the dishes. It wants to be biodegradable, and that's easy to find because it's non-biological. Just look for any type. They're absolutely everywhere nowadays, and go for that. And finally, when you've finished washing whatever it is, you want to clean the water, to get rid of all the debris and the grease and the muck that you've washed off before you give it to the plants. Now, washing the water is no problem. all you need is a watering can, and keeping one by the back door is a good idea, a funnel, and then some kind of filter. You can get them with inbuilt filters, but this is just a piece of fleece that will do the job perfectly well and filter it through. And you don't need too much at any one time because you can't store it. The idea is just to leave it long enough to cool down so it goes on cold, and then use it the same day. And that can go on the garden. Once you've cleaned your water, the thing to do is use it straight away on plants that need it. Forget grass. Grass never needs watering. And I would not use it on edible plants. Just keep it to decorative plants. Herbaceous border is fine, and soak, don't splash. Far better to give a plant a really good soak once a week than a little bit every day, because that way the roots get down deep and it's much better equipped to find what water is available and not get too dry when it is hot. And there you go. You've recycled your water, you've given it back into the garden, and it's dead easy. Now, the most grey water most of us have is in the bath. And to get it out, you've either got to suck on a hose pipe and get a mouthful of your own bath water, not always the nicest thing in the world, or you've got to get buckets and scoop it out. Well, there's a new device here, which I haven't tried, which I certainly will see if it works. It's based on just a suction there. You put that in the bath, it sticks so it won't slip out. There's a filter built into the bottom. Chuck the hose pipe out the window, where you have this pump. Just pull up on it. That acts as a siphon. Turn the tap on, and then you've got a hose pipe with filtered grey water that you can direct wherever you like. Now that costs around about £40. I haven't tried it yet, but I assure you I will tonight. I've got more.
Ooh,
You take two?
Yeah, I dare say.
We're loading up the van because next week is Gardeners World Live, and it's the plant swap. And as we have done for the past few years, we are taking as many plants from Berryfield as we can, because we know that you will be bringing an awful lot from your garden. But please, can you restrict it to just 3 plants? And then we'll give you as many as 3 back. And also, if you can, try and label them. It makes life a lot easier, but we've got Carol to hand. She knows everything. She'll tell you what it is if you don't know. Now, if you haven't got tickets for Gardeners World Live, and I do urge you to because it's a great show, you can go to our website and there you'll get information about how you can buy them. And of course, we're covering it for a full hour. The whole team will be there. There'll be us 3, as well as Sarah and Rachel. It'll be a cracking good show, so join us then. Bye-bye.